Why do I feel like I have met you before?
Before the world learned his name, before magic began to fracture beneath his hands, he had already broken the most fragile thing ever made, her memory. And the cruelest part? She still loved him, just not the version of him that existed. She loved a man who had never hurt her, a man who had never lied, a man who had never rewritten her life 100 times just to keep her breathing. And now, every time he saves her, she remembers him as the villain. This is not a love story. This is what happens when love refuses to let time die. In the kingdom of Varellus, where magic was not a gift but a burden, memory was currency. And no one understood memory better than Alira. Not an archivist, no. She was something far more dangerous, a memory weaver. She did not store the past, she reshaped it. Alira could take a broken memory and stitch it into something softer, something survivable. People came to her carrying grief and left carrying illusions. She told herself it was mercy. She never questioned what it might cost. Until him. Cale did not belong in her world. Not anymore. Time had rejected him. Or perhaps he had rejected time. He had seen her die. Once, twice, 100 times. And every time, he refused to let it stay that way.
You've been watching me like I owe you something.
You do.
That's bold. We've never met.
The first time she died, it was quick. A fall, a mistake. He held her body for exactly 17 seconds before he broke the world to undo it. Each reset saved her life, but stole something else. Trust, memory, truth. Because time remembers what it is forced to forget. For all the darkness that followed him, there were moments, unexpected, almost absurd, where Cale felt human again. Alira tried to teach him her craft, guiding his hands through threads of memory that refused to obey him. He held magic like it was something meant to harm, something meant to break. And she noticed. There was a quiet humor in the way he failed. Repeatedly. Threads tangled, lights snapped, illusions collapsed before they could form. And for a fleeting moment, she smiled at him, not with caution, but with something softer, something dangerously close to ease. It was rare, and that rarity made it unforgettable. But memory is not so easily controlled, even for a memory weaver. There are fractures, hidden beneath the surface, fragments that refuse to stay buried. And when Alira touched one she was never meant to find, the illusion shattered. She saw herself not as she believed she was, but as she had been. Afraid, running, breaking from him. Not toward him. And in that moment, something inside her shifted. Not understanding, not yet, but instinct. The kind that doesn't need memory to survive. The kind that whispers danger, even when the past has been rewritten. Love, in its purest form, is trust. But what happens when trust cannot survive memory? By the time the truth reached her fully, it no longer felt like truth. It felt like betrayal layered over something she could not name. Cale stood before her, not as a savior, but as a question she could no longer ignore. There was something in his eyes, something broken, something relentless, the look of a man who had chosen the same mistake, over and over again. And her fear, it no longer felt misplaced, because somewhere deep within her, beyond altered memories and softened pasts, she understood one thing with terrifying clarity. He had been rewriting her life, not once, not twice, but enough times to turn love into something unrecognizable. And standing there, between the storm and the silence, the distance between them was no longer measured in steps, but in truth. There is a moment, just before a man breaks the world, when silence becomes unbearable. Cale had lived inside that moment more times than time itself could count. He knew the weight of the choice. He knew the cost. Every reset had carved something out of him, something he would never get back. And still, his hand refused to let go. Because memory is not just what we remember, it is what we refuse to lose. Around him, time began to fracture again. Not violently, not yet, but like a warning, a final breath before collapse. He could feel it, the fragile thread of reality stretching thin beneath his will. One more reset, and there might be nothing left to return to. No world, no her, no version of anything untouched by his defiance. And yet, in the quiet space between heartbeat and decision, there she was. Not the version that feared him, not the one that turned away, but the one he had been chasing through broken time. The one who had once looked at him as if he was enough. That memory was the cruelest of all, because it might not even be real anymore. His fingers tightened around the pendant, power gathered, time held its breath, and for the first time, the question was no longer whether he could save her, but whether saving her was the thing destroying her. And then, for the first time since time began to bend beneath his hands, Cale did nothing. No light, no fracture, no desperate reach into the past. The power that had once answered him without question fell silent, because this time he did not call for it. He watched her walk away, not as something to be stopped, but as something to be allowed. Every instinct in him screamed to move, to fix it, to undo the distance before it became permanent. But love, real love, is not measured by how tightly you hold on. It is measured by whether you can let go. And so he stood there, with a heart full of 1,000 stolen moments, and chose not to steal another. Not from her, not from the world, not from time itself. For the first time, her life belonged only to her. In a life untouched by broken timelines, Illyra lived, not as a memory rewritten, not as a story reshaped, but as something whole, something real. She laughed the way she was meant to, without echoes of fear she could not explain. She trusted, without the weight of a past that had never truly been hers. And somewhere in that quiet, ordinary happiness, there was a kind of magic, far greater than anything Cale had ever forced into existence, because this time, her smiles were not borrowed from a forgotten timeline. They were hers, entirely hers. And though she would never remember the man who had unraveled the world to keep her breathing, she carried something forward all the same, a softness, a warmth, a love, without a name. And perhaps that was enough for her, and finally, for him.